Hey Spirit Lifters, good day and I hope you're doing well. In this episode of Spirit Lift, I interviewed Jeremy Howick. Jeremy is a clinical epidemiologist and philosopher of science. He is known for his research on evidence-based medicine and the philosophy of medicine, including the use of placebos in clinical practice and clinical trials. He is the author of two astounding books, one called The Philosophy of Evidence-Based Medicine and the author of Dr. You. Jeremy is also the director of the Oxford Empathy Program at the University of Oxford. And in this fascinating interview with Jeremy, we talk about the power of our body, what are placebos and its effects. And I asked Jeremy his take on this year 2020 and what it means for our humanity. So I hope you enjoy this interview, Spirit Lifters. And as always, I wish you all the best. Take care. Jeremy, welcome to Spirit Lift.
Good day. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to speak with you in this episode of Spirit Lift. And I can't wait to share your background and your insights with Spirit Lifters in this episode. So thank you so much, Jeremy. And just to start off, I want to put into a frame of context, of different situations that we're facing in this world in these times, okay? Approximately 60 to 80% of doctor visits, especially in the UK and the US as examples, are stress related. 1 in 5 college students face tremendous amount of stresses and anxieties, and often in some cases consider suicide. People suffer from issues of insomnia, unlike any other decade, and it's only accelerating. So we're facing, not to mention the situation right now in 2020, which we'll speak about as well later in this interview. But I want to put in frame context this issue right now of how in many countries, heightened levels of stress, heightened anxiety, more severe depression are really taking its toll on many people all around the world. So as we speak today in this interview with you, and as it relates to your books on the philosophy of evidence-based medicine and Dr. You, I really want to see how we can give insight to Spirit Lifters to steer the ship and really help them out, okay? So yes. Does that sound all right to you?
Fantastic.
Excellent, Jeremy. So let's start off. Let's talk about how amazing, and according to your purview, our bodies actually are, okay? And this is really your main work, and I'm really excited to share this with Spirit Lifters, okay? So let's talk about this. Start off. What are placebos, and what is the placebo effect, and what are the ways that it is most effective?
So placebos are like sugar pills that someone gets as part of a clinical trial, for example. They think it might be a real drug, let's say for a headache. They take this sugar pill, and because they believe their headache is going to go away, the headache will actually go away. So the biggest studies that we've done, mega studies with tens of thousands of people, show that most over-the-counter painkillers do not work any better than placebos for most chronic pain. So placebos work basically by doing two things. One thing is they reduce someone's stress. If someone is stressed out and worried about something, they're more likely to have pain. When you're stressed out, your pain receptors are more sensitive. So your back pain, any chronic pain will increase. Depression's enhanced. But if some doctor you trust gives you a pill, even if it's a sugar pill, but as long as you think it might be something more powerful, that can reduce stress. And just as increased stress causes all kinds of diseases, we can go into that later if you want, reduced stress is the antidote, can reduce the risk of all those diseases.
And Jeremy, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to stay in line with that particular point you're making. Can a placebo work even if I know I'm taking a placebo?
That's the funny thing. Two cool guys in Baltimore in 1964 published a study where they took people who were anxious and a bit paranoid, gave them placebos like sugar pills, and told them this is just a placebo, and it still worked. But the really funny thing is that these guys, because they were a bit paranoid already, they thought the doctors were lying. So they thought the doctors were giving them a real pill. But since then, I've done what's called a systematic review of randomized trials, which is a fancy name for basically the least biased evidence we can find, where we compared what happens to people when they get placebos that they know are placebos. So doctors say, this is a placebo, like a sugar pill, but it might help someone like you. So we found that these so-called open label or honest placebos can have an effect as well, almost as strong as the placebos people think are think are the real things, called deceptive placebos. And the reason these open label or honest placebos work is that we have a subconscious reaction. Just like somebody might have a phobia of spiders, they might study and know that this daddy long leg is not a poisonous spider, but their subconscious causes their body to react in a certain way. In the same way, an open label placebo, when a trusted doctor says this might help you, then even if you know it's a sugar pill, in your mind, your body reacts in such a way that activates your body's self-healing properties. And as you mentioned, we all have amazing bodies with amazing healing powers. And
that's Jeremy, I find that so bizarre, to be honest. I think it's fascinating. I think it's important. For me, it just feels like a psychological trick, But let's go into that a bit. And I've heard, this a bit about you when I did research into you, is that, can you explain the placebo effect as it being a combination of a mind-body coordination? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's one thing that even I make the mistake. I talk about mind and body. I talk about psychological or physiological. In fact, there's nothing that's just psychological. Nothing is just in your mind. And to prove it, I've got a simple proof. Try to name something to me that's just psychological. You might say, well, my thoughts or my dreams, but those dreams and thoughts can be, if someone has a brain scan hooked up to you, they can see those thoughts and they can see those dreams, not precisely in the same detail you see them, but they can see where the brain is being activated. So nothing is purely psychological at all. And then almost nothing is purely physical. If someone has a physical ailment, they can feel depressed and upset about it. So psychological, physiological is all tied, intertwined together. So that's why people say it's just psychological. It's never just psychological.
No.
It's both psychological and physiological. The
Sure.
third thing to add is that because of this connection between physiology and psychology, mind and body, you can do things to yourself, like words and certain actions that can influence your entire body.
Sure. Is that why mantras, and in some cultures, mantras and certain prayers are imperative to just good state of well-being and keeping, and that having a beneficial effect on your immune system and whatnot? I know, especially in certain Hindu cultures or Tibetan cultures, that those mantras and those prayers daily just, completely make them feel alive and not have to worry about things. Is this something related in that sort of sense?
Yes, it's called the relaxation response.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, there's 100 or 1,000 different ways to induce this relaxation response, which is the antidote to the stress response. And one of them absolutely is prayers, mantras. It can also be purely relaxing your muscles consciously. If you want, I can tell you about the history of that, how it was discovered with the Beatles. You heard the story before?
Yeah, going to India.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on the inclination of George Harrison or who, but they met I can never pronounce the name right, I'm sorry.
Maharishi Yogi.
Thank you. Yes. And I guess Sgt. Pepper stemmed from that visit, right?
I think so, yeah. And in parallel with their visit there, they became very popular.
Right.
That same year, 1968, a guy called Professor Herbert Benson from Harvard University was doing some studies with drugs on monkeys to lower their blood pressure. And some of these meditators went to Professor Benson and said, listen, we can lower our blood pressure with no drugs. Benson thought they were nuts, but he sent them away. So he sent them away. They were very persistent. They returned. Benson finally agreed to do an experiment, but he had one condition. He said, as long as the Maharishi Yogi himself signs up to the study, that way when I show it doesn't work, I'll expose him as a charlatan.
Yeah, right.
But the Maharishi signed up right away. He said, oh, finally I get Harvard University to back up my technique. And of course, eventually it showed that meditation lowers blood pressure. And then Benson was faced with this problem. Well, if I start promoting the Maharishi Yogi's technique, my colleagues at Harvard, other serious places, will think that I went nuts or I was smoking too much dope with the Beatles. So he thought of what he called a scientific name, which is the relaxation response. And he wasn't entirely wrong, because it's not just the Maharishi Yogi's technique that can induce this inner state of optimal healing. It's also other forms of meditation, prayer, mantras, and many other things.
Well, and that's interesting. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're all different, but they share a common substrate of evoking this relaxation response.
Exactly. And this is going to sound a little bizarre maybe. When I think of my grandma, who was a devout Catholic, she's not with us anymore, but when she would pray, she would induce some sort of just happiness inside of her. When I think of my friends who live in India and who practice, certain mantras and prayers, if whatever's related to that according to the religion. When I think of my friends who live in Saudi Arabia, when I think of certain friends in Japan, like these are friends I have, and they all do their own version of something, and they all feel, like you said, it's that thread that keeps that seems to be, I don't know how much we go into quantum mechanics or whatnot, but there seems to be a thread of vibration that really makes the body feel good, makes the immune system strong, and especially in some of these cultures, especially the people I know in India and like here in Mexico, like people who live in like indigenous regions, like in the Chiapas and Oaxaca, they don't take any pharmaceuticals. Okay, like they say they don't need it. So like they seem to live a very long time. Okay, but I don't know if that has to do with because they are devout in their prayers and keeping these, and devout in these mantras and keeping a sense of, let's say, elevating their system inside, their innerness, which you speak a lot about as well in Dr. Yu, right? To really keep them healthy. Is there something to that?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I'm not against the drugs and pharmaceuticals. I'm against too much of it, because we take too much of it. Just like I might have like a beer on a Friday afternoon after work or in the evening, but one is okay, or two, but 10 or 20 is going to be bad for me. We're doing the same thing now with pharmaceutical drugs and interventions as taking 10 or 20. So for example, medical harm caused by drugs, so medication side effects are the third leading cause of death in the US, and it's not that different elsewhere. That's nuts. And our bodies, meanwhile, are able to heal. These people who don't take any drugs, I mean, that's wonderful. Most of us might want to take just fewer, a lot less than we do actually take.
Like a balance, maybe, depending on your situation, obviously, right?
We've lost the sense of balance. The average person over 65 in the US, Canada, I'm sure it's the same among certain groups in Mexico, take a minimum of 5 prescription drugs a day, many taking 20. Their lives a non-stop ritual of popping pills, managing side effects, trying to remember what pill to take when one of the problems might be dementia. So we've lost this kind of our sense that we have this inner power that can heal the vast majority of things that people currently visit their family doctors for. Well,
and let's talk about that, Jeremy, because I've, when researching you, there's something that you talk about, and it's actually a scientific word. I didn't realize. It sounds more like a movie, but the natural killer cell.
That's my favorite one. Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit of detail about that, please?
So our immune system is amazing. I mean, the proof that our immune system is amazing is a dead corpse gets eaten up by parasites within a few weeks. It's gone. There's no more flesh. That's what would happen to us without the immune system. The immune system takes invading viruses, bacterias. It eats them up. And these natural killer cells are pretty cool. They're literally going like on a search and destroy mission for things we shouldn't have, like unwanted bacteria, dangerous viruses, and so on. So even this COVID, not everyone who breathes in a COVID virus gets the symptoms. The immune system is often strong enough to, fight it off. And that's what a vaccine is. The vaccine just gets you some antibodies so that your immune system recognizes it and then search and destroys those viruses. So that those are natural killer cells, are amazing. And there's so many amazing things about our bodies. If I took your blood vessels, laid them end to end, they would wrap around the world twice.
Wow.
The vessels of the lesser known lymphatic system, if laid end to end, would wrap around the world more than 5 times. Your bones, pound for pound, are stronger than steel. And we've forgotten all these things. And so when anything small goes wrong, we search for the pill, which is usually too fast. And in the meantime, we also have not managed our stress. And as you said, these stress and stress-related ailments, which is many, many ailments, if not most, they've gone out of control.
So, and do you think, Jeremy, in your opinion, that I don't want to say like losing a sense of ourselves, but do you think there, especially in recent times, there's a sense that we are not appreciating, because I think this has to do a lot with gratitude and appreciation in some sense, that we don't appreciate or even are educated enough to know what is going on inside of here, right? And we're just getting fed from the outside, numbing and dumbing down our sensibility, our sense of who we are, to really know what we can appreciate about us and can appreciate and should appreciate about what this amazing, thing we are can do. Do you feel like that?
I love that word gratitude, because and what you said is gratitude for what we have inside. It also applies, one of the techniques we have to reduce stress is gratitude for other things we have. So yeah, what we have inside is amazing. Those amazing facts I just named about the blood vessels, they don't even teach those in medical school. So most doctors, they know it, they could find it out, but they're not taught it as a kind of bread and butter. And I think that we should all be taught this. In addition to that, we have our own inner
But why
pharmacy.
not? Why don't they talk about it?
I think that they're just, they're academically inclined. They like to take things apart and not look at the big picture. So academics are good at criticizing and separating, and it takes someone from the outside often to come and package it up. But I'm hoping to change that. So a lot of doctors like the book Dr. Ewan, so I hope to be changing that. And talk about that a bit more. Our inner pharmacy makes its own happy chemicals. People take Prozac and so on, or morphine. The word endorphin is what your body makes. It just means morphine that your body makes. Take 2 words, endogenous, which means your body makes it, and morphine. Take those 2 words, endogenous morphine, squish them together, you get endorphin. There's a slight difference if you want to be a real picky in the molecule, but for all intents and purposes, an endorphin is the same as the morphine that addicts shoot up or that they give you in the hospital. And we can make that by ourselves. Dopamine. People take cocaine to get high.
Right.
The reason to get high in cocaine is because the cocaine causes more dopamine to be available in the body, but your body makes it by itself. Oxytocin.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, oxytocin, the happy chemical, they call it the kind of snuggle chemical. Your body has its own surgeon. If I get a scratch in my hand, the body heals it up. I can't even see it later on. There's no scar. Even a deeper scratch, if it doesn't get infected, body heals it. And most times it doesn't get infected even without any antibiotic, because the body can do it. So these are amazing facts. We got to keep them in the forefront of our minds and be grateful for them. You're right.
Yeah, and I got let's say a 2-in-1 question related to that, because I think it's fascinating, Jeremy. One, in your opinion, related to what you're saying right now, how can we awaken from your purview, the natural placebo within us every day? Okay, and then intertwined within that same idea, why do we think that? Why do we get so distracted or deviated from this amazingness of this natural pharmacy with outside of us. What I'm trying to say is the stimuli from the outside so great, medically and scientifically, that it can overwhelm and just dilute our sense of being and our sense of being in touch with ourselves. So
Yes.
that's kind of 2 in 1.
That's great. So I'll try to get both, but if I don't, follow up. So
Yeah.
basically, yes, I mean, I think one reason is that just like any single pill might have a side effect, modern medicine, it's been so successful, in many ways, the antibiotics, corticosteroids, heart replacements. It's been so effective that but it has at least one negative side effect, or two. One is that we forgot how amazing our bodies are. We human beings survived for millions of years before modern medicine. And then the second one is that we become too dependent on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem. It is successful, but doesn't mean we should be so dependent on it.
Right.
And then what was the other part of your question?
So the other question is, how, in your opinion, how can we just awaken that natural placebo within us every day? Like, what are your ways, your insights, your recommendations for people just like, okay, here you go. This is how you, I guess, feel amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's actually much easier than we think. It's so easy that people don't even believe it's scientific. And it's actually a matter of doing nothing. Right now we do too much. Let me explain with a story about an imaginary story about a caveman. So imagine you're a caveman or a cave person or a cave woman. It's the dawn of human history. And suddenly you and your friends are walking back from a wild hunt and you startle a pack of wolves inadvertently by accident. Your body freezes, but inside your body, what's called your sympathetic nervous response kicks off. Adrenaline and cortisol rush through your veins so that you can have the pancreatic levels are adjusted so you get more sugar in your muscles so you can fight more. Your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up again so you can fight. Your pupils will dilate so you can see better in the dark. Pain messages get suppressed. So if you get bitten by a wolf, you don't cry, you keep on fighting. All this amazing reaction called the fight or flight response is designed to help you survive an acute attack from the wolf. So now what happens today, there's no wolf. Even back then, there weren't that many attacks from wolves, but the caveman, after, let's say you had this, threw a rock at the wolves ran away, the caveman or cave person could go into the camp, relax evening by the fire. Life as a Neanderthal was physically difficult, but predictable. Nowadays, though, we get the bad news from COVID. I can talk about that later, Our boss pisses us off. We're on a part-time contract, fight. And all those things, they just activate that same response, which is it's amazing for surviving an acute event, a short-term event. When it happens too much, though, the immune system and the digestive system goes haywire. And we put ourselves in a reverse gear.
Right.
There's a lot of science behind that I can talk about, but basically, when your fight or flight response goes on, your immune system it's a bit complicated, but it goes off more or less. It's not in your interest when you have to fight a wolf to devote resources to fighting a bacteria. And we all know that. We might have an exam, and after the exam we get sick. The bacteria was already there, or the virus was already there, but we said we can't fight the virus now, no resources for that. Let's focus on the exam. After the exam, I'll let myself get sick. So too much of that, the immune system goes on, off, and it goes haywire.
And that's not healthy, right? The immune system has to be more steady, more level at all times, right?
We got to go back to the neutral. So likewise with digestion, we all know that. Imagine you're pretty hungry, not starving to death, but hungry, and all of a sudden a scary dog barks at you. You won't feel hungry. Not only you don't feel hungry, your digestive juices stop flowing. Ivan Pavlov proved this beyond a reasonable doubt. So again, it's not in your interest. If you got to fight a wild dog or wild wolf, it's not in your interest to devote resources, energy to digesting. So if you can't digest nutrients, of course, you're not going to be absorbing the right ones. You're going to get more sick. So this stress response is the cause. So the solution is simple. You can't avoid stress. It's part of life.
Yeah,
you can manage it. Of course, there's sometimes you can manage. If you got a really bad abusive position, you can leave it, then leave. But by and large, there's always something to get stressed out about. It's important to press the reset button. ideally a couple times a day, for 20 minutes, twice a day. Take some time to do your favorite relaxation technique, whether it be prayer, and I don't mean to use the word, I'm not being disrespectful.
Not religious, but maybe like just like the like what a mantra would be, but prayer has the same technique,
Prayer, a mantra, conscious relaxation, traditional yoga where you're doing mindful movement, Tai Chi, Qigong. There are a number, if you haven't found one, we reach out to me on my social media. I'll help you find one. It's not hard because we all like different things. I'm a very active guy, so I prefer to do the meditation and movement, that kind of traditional yoga. And there are some things we can do. We'll do it at the end, maybe, or now, whenever you want to. There's 3 techniques I recommend to evoke the relaxation response in less than a minute each.
Why don't you explain that now, Jeremy? That'd be great.
Okay, so the first one is called the sigh of relief. You've all heard that word, sigh of relief. The reason is the sigh is the body's natural way of release. You can do it in the middle of the day, whenever you want. You can just take a deep breath in, hold the breath for a moment, and then let out a sigh.
That feels good.
Feels great.
Hey, Jeremy, have it really quick before you move on to the next part, in continuation with this, about the breathing itself. I've heard from some people and people who I know do Qigong that the exhale is more important than the inhale. Is that correct? Is that correct?
The exhale is when you're relaxing.
Okay.
So focusing on the exhale and the sigh, of course, I just said breathe in. I didn't tell you how to breathe in.
Okay.
When you breathe
just
out,
let it flow, right?
The sigh. Breathe in, yeah. Of course, there are advanced methods by which we slow down the inhale and the exhale, and that can be even better, because what we're doing there is breathing happens whether we're conscious of it or not. When you're sleeping, you still breathe, etc. The thing is that slowing down the breath gives your body a subconscious message: everything's okay, I can slow down, I can kind of activate this relaxation response. So if you take the subconscious process of breathing under your conscious control by slowing it down, it has a big effect. You're correct, Devin, that it's the exhale is more important, but if you can, the more advanced techniques also involve slowing the inhale and the exhale. So when I do it, when I'm focused, I'll take 1 full minute for 1 breath cycle. So I'll take a breath in, I'll hold it, and then I'll breathe. So I'll take 10 seconds to breathe in, I'll hold for 30 or 40 seconds, then I'll breathe out for 20 seconds.
Holy cow, really? Oof.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of discipline. Wow.
But it doesn't feel uncomfortable. If it feels uncomfortable, it's the opposite. You're causing a stress response. So if it feels uncomfortable, do 3 seconds in. And if you're just a beginner, just take a deep breath in and breathe out slowly.
That feels great.
That's actually the second technique I teach. You can do this while you're listening to this great interview with Devin and I, or while you're working. You can consciously, comfortably breathe in more slowly than you usually do, and breathe out more slowly than you usually do. I won't even specify how long to do it for. Just breathe in consciously, slowly.
And you can feel your body when I do that. When you're explaining that, Jeremy, I can just feel like just a lightness overwhelm, like this part of the body, the head. Feels like the blood's moving a little better. Like my face feels tingly. It feels good, Yeah.
We're taught nowadays, the more you produce, the better. And it's all disease. We want to get in the fast lane, go as fast as we can.
Right.
I've got to produce more and more papers. And that's all necessary to survive in the modern world to a point. But we've forgotten how to just slow down.
Sure.
Forgotten that.
And I think that's an important. And let me just ask one quick thing. And you can finish the other 2 techniques that you were speaking about, because I'm just so curious, and I think spirit lifters will really love this. Is that I think that's the main problem, is that the overstimuli, the speed of life these days, the intake of too much stuff. Well, I think we're being overwired. I don't know. I think it's too much all the time. over consuming and just living at a pace that our natural body's not used to following at all, and I think that just chemically and so much of our hardwired side gets affected by that, I think, so that like in some countries you see this minimalist movement. It's like, okay, I'm gonna only own 30 things now, and I'm gonna eat these things now. And it's interesting watching those people and it's a community now, it's a big community. It's like when they've lived purposely this life of less is more, they feel amazing. I mean,
first of all, it's called our overloaded brain on the brink of ruin. This overloaded brain, constant input, and don't forget to ask me about the kind of COVID and nocebo, but
I'll talk about that.
Time, it's kind of like, it's all, we're bombarding our brains, overactive with apps and this and that, and activities. When I was a kid, my dad used to ring a bell at dinner time, 6 p.m. You didn't know, on the weekend, you wouldn't even know where we were from, 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. We were playing, besides lunchtime, we were playing in the street. It was safe. Now they got these people going to this activity, that activity. It was all fine up to a point, but we've gone overboard. It's nuts.
And Spirit Lifters, Jeremy's from Montreal, by the way, just to mention. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, yes, just think of a monk. The monk wears one habit, whether it's a Catholic monk or a Buddhist monk or a Hindu monk. They wear one thing. They might have one spare if they're washing it. Think how much time they save. You and I spend time. I thought to myself, what should I wear? What t-shirt should I wear for this interview? Didn't take that long, but I tried 2 different ones on. If I was a monk, I saved that time. It's only a minute, but those minutes add up over the day. Right. So simplifying our life frees us to be more relaxed and more creative, actually, by putting things into a simple routine with fewer things.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And it's so important, and we got to be disciplined, I think, just to have a healthier life, and more balance is the key. Yeah. Jeremy, can you go back into and we kind of deviated a little bit, but go back into the other part of those techniques that you do teach, please? Yeah,
sure. So I did 2 already. The first one is the sigh of relief. The second one is slowing down your breath.
Right.
The third one is, I'll explain how to do it. It's so simple. You just set a timer for 1 minute.
1 minute, okay.
1 minute, and then close your eyes and count how many breath cycles you take. Don't do anything to the breath. Don't breathe slower or faster than you normally do. Just count how many cycles. 1 cycle is in and out you take. In 1 minute, how many cycles in and out? And count them. 1 cycle, 2 cycles. Some people have 12, some have 10, some have 6. There's no right and wrong. What happens is that at the end of the minute, you're gonna feel like it was longer than a minute, and your body will feel relaxed. Those 3 techniques, the first 2 take almost no time, because the slow breathing you can do while you're doing anything else. Third one takes a minute, but those benefits are amazing. And I would say we don't have time. We can't afford not to take the time to do those things. Yeah. And we need to. And I think going back in relation to what we're saying, we just have to be disciplined to do it. I think when I observe around life, it's like, it just seems that it's so impulsive to get on the phone. It's so comforting to hear the ding from your WhatsApp. People are so comforted by certain modalities of technologies and other things that I don't know. There's this a huge disconnect between what's really going on with me, Devin, or you, Jeremy, or whoever. It's just like, what's going on inside, and how can we, tap into that power inside of us? Yeah. This stuff, those WhatsApp dings, it gives people comfort in the same way that heroin gives a heroin addict comfort.
Yeah.
It's not so. We're all addicted. We're all addicted to them, and this is a problem with human beings. Since the very beginning of technology, we are smart enough to invent the technology, but we're never smart enough to use it wisely. Think of fire. Think of fire became a weapon, a nuclear bomb. So nuclear bomb, sure, you invent it. Nuclear power might be okay, maybe, but nuclear bomb is damaging. The phone can be great. I live here. I got family around the world. I can stay connected to them. I can reach out to them, which is wonderful. But it got to the point during lockdown, I was using my phone more and more.
Exactly.
I put it outside the room for the bedroom. For sleeping, it's in the kitchen here. I sleep in the bedroom without the phone.
And this interview is being recorded through Zoom, and fortunately we can do this, but there's also an expression in these times called "I'm zoomed out," with the oversaturation of time being, spent on Zoom, for video conferencing and work and whatnot, So.
Yeah, and this is wonderful. I mean, we're doing a great interview. I'm enjoying it. You're enjoying it.
Yeah.
We're trying to make people feel better. We will hopefully make people feel better and happier. But again, it's about not overusing it. So
exactly.
I mean,
balance.
use it wisely, and then avoid too much negative stuff.
Right.
That just exacerbates the problem.
Yeah, and we'll go into COVID land in a second here, but just a couple other things in this first part, Jeremy. I want to ask you again, related to placebo, is that sort of any ethical issues around it, like I wonder as well, like especially in the medical community, is there any stipulations regarding any ethical issues regarding placebos, number one, and number two, I'm kind of curious personally about this, having unfortunately loved ones pass away from cancer. Could you give a cancer patient a placebo and their immune system just knock out those cells somehow? Is that even possible?
So my mom, who my book is dedicated, died of stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And she's doing everything, all the right things. I mean, sometimes these external things, like cancer things, have become so overwhelming that there's not much someone can do. There's nothing someone can do. It just that's it. So with someone with advanced stage cancer, I mean, you wouldn't even want to consider these milder techniques. What we want to do is prevent it. And the fact is that everybody has cancer cells. You have cancer cells, I've got cancer cells. We don't not diagnosed with cancer. Our immune system is knocking out cancer cells all the time. So the question is, what makes it the cancer cells outgrow the power of the immune system? Well, we don't know the answer to that question, but what we do know is that keeping our immune system as resilient as possible by doing these kind of relaxation exercises will give us the best shot we can.
And I think that's not being spoken about too much in these times in 2020, and it's so bizarre to me. It's like, I mean, because that's true, and what your book focuses on a lot as well is about that. So like, man, how come that should be in the news like every day? Like, your immune system, do this, like, I would think that should be
negative news sells. It's known that a negative thing is more likely to be clicked on than a positive thing.
Sure.
Also, you can't. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I believe in theories, and some have evidence, some don't. So I don't even like the word conspiracy theories. Some of them are.
Right.
But the point is, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I'm also not against industry.
Yeah.
Closely made by industry. I'm not against industry. But we'd be crazy to think that there's not some commercial interest. I mean, we can't patent this stuff. We can't patent those exercises I do. They're freely available.
Sure.
You can also pay for them. But I mean, and there are of course more advanced ones. I'm giving you the simple ones. But in general, they're thousands of years old. They're known, and you can't patent it. So there's no big commercial interest in it. And I think also in a consumer society, if people are happy, they're not going to buy all that junk, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's not commercially viable, I guess, in some way.
Yeah, it's much less commercially viable unless you have a kind of an Instagram body, and even then there's so few of those. And even you cannot patent it, so the margins are not as big.
Yeah, no, I know. It's man, oh man, what can you do? But and Jeremy, I don't think our spirit lifters know right now, and I'm about to tell them, is that you are a rower, or you were a rower at least, and
yes.
you won a medal for it, which is great. So can you tell spirit lifters your personal story of the placebo effect and as it relates to your rowing history?
Yeah, so basically when I was in high school, I was kind of clumsy. I was clumsy, and my high school was a place where there was you got picked on if you weren't kind of tough. So the tough guys all played basketball. So I wanted to play basketball. Because I was a bit clumsy, I missed a simple layup. And the coach told me, I can't teach you to play basketball. You're too goofy. So I gave up on basketball. I focused on studying. I studied like a madman all the time. I got into a pretty good university. I skipped a year of high school. Then at university, my first week, this tall guy comes up to me and says, hey, I want you to try out for the rowing team. I said, no, I'm too goofy for sports. I can't really do it properly. He said, no, I couldn't row. I'm the coach. I never rowed either before I went to university. And I want you to, but I believed in myself. I believe in this team I'm building. You guys can be national champions if you join up. So I said, wow, that sounds great. I joined up. I trained like mad, and we ended up winning a national championship and so on. But I got to thinking,
incredible. Wow.
Yeah, I got to think, how could I go from bad at sports to good at sports? The answer was the coach believed in me. And this power of belief in medicine is called the placebo effect. So when I went into my academic career, I chose to pursue to see if this belief effect, which affected me personally in sports, also had some wider medical application. And I learned, of course, as you know, that it does.
Okay, so that experience kind of then was this silver lining to what you're doing now, more or less, right?
Yeah, that got me curious. When I retired from rowing, my life is more complicated than that, but basically I retired from rowing, went into graduate studies, got a PhD, and now I've done about 15 years of research, about 100 publications, mostly on the power of the placebo or methodological issues surrounding how we can understand those placebo effects.
No, it's incredible. And what an interesting story. And, it's just, I mean, just to have, and the thing is sometimes you don't, it just depends the way you look on life, I guess, but some of these things don't seem, to really happen by accident, but one thing leads to another, and then you do what you do, and that becomes your life, so it's really interesting. And, I'm really happy that you got into this, and that we can share this opportunity to talk about these things. It's so important. Jeremy, in your opinion, as far as the medical community is concerned, and you talk, you're an advocate of this, it seems like, we got to have more empathy as medical professionals. I'm not a medical professional, sorry. Let me clarify what I'm trying to say is that the medical community itself needs to institute a more, let's say, way of incorporating that sensibility of empathy with its patients. I don't want to generalize either. And look, I have a brother who's a nurse as well, and he really is personable with his patients, and that's great, and he's a good example in that way. But maybe it is still lacking on a broader spectrum as well in the community, and even doing maybe holistic things for patient recovery. There's some places in the world like, okay, we'll treat you. You have this serious issue. We understand that. We're going to treat this with modern medicine that does work. Here's one part of it. And then the other slice of the pie may be this kind of other integral, holistic way of, okay, let's try incorporating a little bit of yoga here, or a little bit of exercise here in fitness, nutrition, many things. But having this holistic way and the sensibility coming from the angle of, let's say, the doctor or whoever it is, to really just step in your shoes and just say, hey, like, I know what you're going through. I know what you feel. I'm here for you. And I know it's difficult. I think that's really, that message, that part of your work that you're putting out, I think is so important. And I really encourage just so many people, especially if they are in the medical community, to really grab onto. Can you go into that a bit more in detail, Jeremy? I think it's so important.
Yeah, so at the Oxford Empathy Program that I founded, our goal is to make sure that every healthcare consultation between a doctor, a nurse, and a patient has a dose of empathy. And it relates back to your other question about the ethics of placebos. So sugar pills, doctors aren't going to start handing out sugar pills. I think it can be done ethically as long as they tell the patient, but it's just a bit thorny. Yeah. One thing they can do is they can use the way they communicate empathically and also communicating hope which is part of empathy. When they do that, I did a mega study with 29 randomized controlled trials. Positive empathic communication improves a range of outcomes, including reducing pain, improving satisfaction, improving quality of life, reducing length of stay in hospital, reducing morphine use, improving lung function. The list goes on and on. And we did also another mega study where we looked all across the world. Are doctors and healthcare professionals empathic, or how empathic are they?
Okay.
And it turns out there's wide variation. So a lot are, like your brother, I'm sure, is one of them.
Yeah.
But not all of them are. And I witnessed that myself in some personal experiences with my mom, and I'm sure other people have too. And the reason they don't think it's important. They treat the body as a machine. Again, the body is a machine. My arm is like a lever and so on, but it's much more than a machine. And the communication, positive empathic communication, can reduce someone's stress. It can make them activate their brain's reward mechanism so that the brain produces its own healing chemicals, happy chemicals, etc.
And Jeremy, I'm really curious to know, how do you teach that to the medical community? How do they, just going back to what we said earlier, if we really tap in and understand and really connect with that inner self inside of us, that takes a level of understanding, discipline, and dedication, right? That's the way I see it, because we can, just be the best of what we are inside and treat it the best way we can by really taking care of it, right? That's a personal thing. So how, in a similar way, or maybe in a bit different, how do we do that and communicate that properly to the medical community as far as the work you do?
Yeah. People think, well, hey, we can't teach empathy. Some people are good at it, some are bad at it. That's just not true. It's true that some people are good and bad, but it doesn't mean we can't teach them.
Right.
Just like some people are good drivers, some are bad drivers, but if you give them all a good lesson, they can all become better drivers. The best ones might not become that much better because they're already great. So the same thing happens, but the first thing we teach them is I tell them about the evidence and how it works, because oftentimes they're taught to view the patient as a relatively simple machine, and they just don't take the time or effort into empathy. It's like I tell you, hey Devin, eat more apples or eat more fruits and veg. You know how to do it, but you just don't do it.
You just don't do it,
Yeah, if I tell you just to do, you can do it. So I tell people, be more empathic. Right away, it means that they're focusing on it. It means they're focusing on being present for the patient. So the first thing is to motivate them to do whatever they do naturally, innately. And then we top that up with kind of different levels, basic, intermediate, and advanced techniques. The basic techniques are just to kind of like a tick box, not of specific words to use because everyone's different, but to make sure that they're asking the patient what their ailment means to them. For some people, the knee pain, they don't care about the pain, they're scared to walk. So just saying, hey, you know what, it's actually good if you walk, the pain will go away. So what the disease means to them, which will help them give the right treatment, prescribe the right treatment.
Right.
The more advanced ones are about being present there. Yeah.
Jeremy, have you had positive feedback from the medical community, doctors and whatnot, that have put that into action and applied it in their own practice?
When I first gave the presentation about this, my former head of department, who was a doctor, he said, "This is all rubbish. I don't even want to know about your studies. They must be rubbish." But I think there are some people who don't believe it. These are people who believe that all we need is some more pills and so on.
Right.
But by far the vast majority say, yes, I love it, because what's happened is not only do patients suffer from lack of empathy, the doctors suffer at least as much for two reasons.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, because right now family doctors are all they do is fill out forms and protocols. They spend twice as much time filling out forms as they do treating patients. They're treated just like they're dehumanized. So I tell them, no, you guys, your communication, your positive empathic communication is a powerful therapy. This validates them. I mean, it's true. It's not fluffy. The second thing is that when doctors are more empathic, their levels of burnout are reduced. So
That's
actually,
interesting. Mm-hmm.
yeah, the vast majority of it also reduces medical legal risk, which is very important in places like the U.S. and maybe others. So this the vast majority love it. If anything, the objection isn't that they're rubbish, like this one guy. I think they're anomalous. Is that they say we don't have time to do it, which is why I'm doing a project now. It's under review by a major journal, looking at the cost effectiveness of empathy.
That's interesting. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should just it should just be required as professional. Just like if I'm a coach or a teacher, I should be polite, part of my job. But I think looking at the cost effectiveness is necessary in this context of increasingly supposedly scarce resources.
That's going to be a really interesting study, because if there are, quite, let's say, interesting and positive results with that, I mean, then that could have, I guess, disseminate in such a way to apply it in many other practices, and that could really change the industry in a certain way, for sure. I think it would be fascinating. Jeremy, going into COVID land now. We're recording this in 2020. We're halfway through the year. Okay. A lot of the world, many societies have unfortunately lost a lot of, people. A lot of loved ones have suffered, unfortunate deaths related to this issue. And, we're still waiting for a vaccine, and we're still waiting for certain signs of hope. And each individual country is being tested. There's no way around that. I think, I'm in Mexico City. You're in Oxford, UK. We are experiencing different ways of this as well. And we just have to see what's going to happen. I don't know how to put that in a different way. But my point is this. You're also a philosopher, right? Interested in your purview, and for our spirit lifters, kind of what this year means from your perspective, as your philosophical insight would be really interesting.
This year's been a shit show.
Yeah. I mean, just as it relates to, I guess, as it relates to just our own humanity, okay?
Yeah.
As what I mean by that is that we, as long as, I've been alive, maybe as long as you've been alive, we haven't experienced in such a short time period a way of completely changing the course of our humanity, unlike what we are experiencing right now. I mean, it's unprecedented,
It's crazy. I think we realize how vulnerable we are. Think about it.
That's what I want to get at. What do you see it from your eyes in that way? Like, what do you think about all this?
We thought we were invincible. This COVID-19 or SARS-CoV, whatever you want to call it, the coronavirus for short, or the colloquial term for it, it's tiny. It's 125 nanometers in diameter. It's completely naked, completely invisible to the naked eye. Even if you had a million of them bunched up together, you still wouldn't be able to see them. Yet, it traveled around the world in a few weeks. The way it works is it goes into your cells, it attaches onto a cell, pretending it's something else, goes into the cell, convinces your own cell to help it reproduce itself, and then go elsewhere. And it went around the world in a few days, and it jumped from a bat to a pangolin to a human. This tiny little thing did all this damage to people's health. Tragically, people have died even alone. It's exposed our health systems. It's exposed our inequalities, because those at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum are being hit the worst. It's exposed weak leadership in the part of many governments. It's also exposed strong leadership in the part of others. It's also taught us that's all the negative things, but in concert with this pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, there's been a bad pandemic of stress and fear. People have spent too much time watching the bad news. You got to limit your time on that stuff. But I'm optimistic, Devin, that we've learned a lot of positive things too. So I've had to spend time, I've been locked on this, I'm in my flat now. It's 70 square meters. I've been here with my wife. and
Yeah.
2 children. One of them was born in the height of COVID, right here, a meter from where I'm standing. The baby was
Congratulations.
born. Thanks. Just over 11 weeks and 1 day ago, today. I'm not counting or anything.
Yeah.
And then, and you know, I've realized how important our family is, how important it is to focus on family, how lucky I am to have my family, how lucky I am to have friends. Our neighbors have been very kind to us. We've been kind to our neighbors as well. So we've realized the importance of our social connections, and we've realized we can't rely all that stuff. What good does, we don't need all that shopping actually. I'm sorry for my friends who own shops. I'm hoping to get back up to par, but I mean, we don't need all that stuff. Most people were okay.
The amount of money we're saving, right?
That's right. And then we need to appreciate our social connections because we're missing them now.
Yeah.
We've been isolated, forced. Isolation has been forced upon us. We realize what we've missed.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that we come out of this with the positive lessons, not going backwards, not when the shops opened, all of a sudden go nuts, have an orgy of shopping, but come out of it sensibly. Good leadership, address unnecessary inequalities, no matter whether you're conservative or liberal. There's no need for someone to be starving or for a healthcare professional in a hospital not to have enough equipment to protect themselves. Appreciate those people. There's a lot of people my father-in-law is a delivery driver on minimum wage. He's been so-called a key worker. He's been exposing himself to risk every night.
Right.
He's been more appreciated now. He never used to get tips, and now he gets, but still, I mean, these people were underappreciated by their employers and society. So I hope we come out of it with more love for each other. I haven't planned this, so just more love for each other. Focus on a more resilient society, and we are more resilient as individuals. And I hope that my research plays a part in that.
Absolutely, and I think that's why it's important you and I are having this conversation right now and this year and in this time, because you are all about that. Is that really that, again, we're going back to that thread we've talked about throughout this conversation about appreciation, about gratitude, about realizing self-awareness. Like we're more self-aware now, like you said, about what we do with our life, the people around us, how things are, etc. And it goes back to what we were speaking about earlier, that self-awareness, that appreciation, that sense of what we are really is amazing. What we are doing with our life, if we do it in a way that has so much potential, I mean, so there's this thread of like taking into account that there's so much that we can be grateful for all the time, and being in this particular circumstance all around the world, the whole world's experiencing this to some degree, right? Can really, really bring out that in us if we choose to, right?
Yeah, it gets everybody, no matter what religion you are, what race you are.
Yeah,
we're all humankind,
right?
And so we're all in this together.
Yeah,
and I hope that we realize that both at the micro level and the macro level, and come out of this, because things are being destroyed now. We have an opportunity to build it back up the way we like, the way that's making everybody happier and healthier.
Exactly, Jeremy. Yeah. And I just got a couple other things to ask you, Jeremy, if you would permit. Let's talk, because what we're going through now falls in line well with the nocebo effect. Can you go into a bit of that detail and how that relates to what we're experiencing now?
Yeah. So in my research on the placebo effect, which basically is the effect of a positive belief, the positive effect, the nocebo is the placebo's naughty cousin. So if the placebo is like Luke Skywalker, the nocebo is like Darth Vader. Nocebo is the negative effect of a negative belief. And I first came across this by, there was one guy, it's a true story. He was in a clinical trial of a new antidepressant, and he felt kind of like he didn't like life anymore, so he swallowed all of his pills from the pill bottle. But as soon as he did it, he thought, I made a mistake. He ran to the hospital. He told the doctors, I swallowed all my pills, and then collapsed. His blood pressure was really low, heart rate was really high. They had to give him 6 liters of fluid
Oh my
just to
goodness.
get his blood pressure to normal. But then at that time, the head physician from the clinical trial arrived and ascertained that this guy, they call him Mr. A,
Mhm.
was in the placebo arm of the trial. He had taken 30 placebos, like sugar pills. So he didn't overdose on the drug, he
Mhm.
overdosed on his own fear. And
Oh
I've
my
done another,
goodness.
I did another mega study where I found, identified 250,000 patients, 250,000 patients, all of whom had taken a placebo, like a sugar pill in a clinical trial. Half of them report having at least one negative side effect. Now, the negative side effect isn't because of the sugar pill. It could be just because it comes up in real life and they didn't know why it was the case, but we did some deeper analysis, and oftentimes it's because they expect something bad to happen.
Right.
Again, back to the stress response. They're stressed out about a tummy ache and they experience a tummy ache. They're stressed out about a headache, they get a headache,
Sure.
etc.
Mhm.
So now with the COVID pandemic, it's nocebo all day. We wake up in the morning, number of deaths, number of new cases, new lockdown, and then that's a nocebo all the time. And then there's conflicting messages from different countries. Who's right, who's wrong? And there's all kinds of different theories about how it came about, including conspiracy theories and fake news. All that together, we're basically doing what Mr. A did, but not as bad. Most of us aren't passing out, but it's not good for health. It increases anxiety, depression, pain.
Tremendously, right?
Yeah. So we got to kind of limit it, do the relaxation stuff, and then greatly limit the amount of time you spend looking at the news. Use your phone wisely. Use your technology wisely to do positive things. And then check the news out once a day to see if there's any necessary updates, and then
Right.
turn it back off.
And I think that's important what you're saying. As far as news, because look, some countries are contingent on what they're told that they can and can't do, and when they can and can't do it. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we got to pay attention to that and know what that means, so
Yes.
we can, anticipate at least some way of normality pre-COVID, which I don't think will be totally, on the horizon for a while. But yeah, we have to be up to date, at least in a certain way, to know, what's safe and not safe. I mean, and that should be the extent of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jeremy, just to, close off this really scintillating interview and discussion with you and Spirit Lifters, we're going to include all Jeremy's information in the video description below that you can check out, even his courses. Okay. Jeremy, everything that you talk about, all your research, is just really focused on how we can just be the best versions of ourselves. That's the way I take away from it as well. It's just like we're amazing, constructs of life. We have so much that is inside of us, so much to just experience that can bring out the best in ourselves, those around us, the experience of this life itself. And it's really, really incredible. Your book, Dr. You, that really goes into that. So what I want to just ask you to finish off, and for our Spirit Lifters, what would be your tip, your insight, to just to live a good life?
That's a great question. To sum it up, obviously we've already done the relaxation exercises, but as you said, we're amazing. You have 30 trillion cells in your body. You can't even fathom that number. It's too big. But each one of those 30 trillion can reproduce, can communicate, can transport, molecules. So one thing we can all do is give. Be altruistic. Do something nice for someone else. That way we're experiencing our own power, because by giving, we're kind of showing ourselves subconsciously that we have something to give. That's the kind of subconscious message. And that makes us realize at a deep level that we are very powerful. So do something nice for somebody else. Even if it's a tiny thing, pay someone's tea, call up an old friend, say, I was just thinking about you. choose your own thing to do and do it, and do the relaxation exercises.
Yeah.
And stuff that on the-
every day, right?
Anyway, do it as a routine. Make a habit of it.
Yeah.
If someone asked you, if someone said, let's meet, and you might say, I'm too busy. They said, okay, let's just meet for 5 minutes for a coffee, or 7 minutes. You say, okay, I got 5 minutes. But if you say you got 5 minutes for relaxation, no, you don't have that time. But you do have that time, because if it was for coffee, you would have said yes.
Exactly. Exactly. It's what we choose to do with our time and how we do it, you know?
Yeah.
Jeremy, this was an excellent conversation with you, and thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you and be on the Spirit Lift episode. And where can more people find out more information about you, please?
The best thing is any social media. I'm on all of them. It's Jeremy Howick on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube channel. I've also got the book, as you said, Dr. You. And for those who don't want to read the book, just want to do the exercises, I've got a cool 8-week course that just takes about a minute or two a day on average, that we'll be sharing the link for that course as we share this video.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that, Jeremy. And Spirit Lifters will include all of Jeremy's information in the description below in the pinned comments. So please be sure to check that out and do his course. It looks fascinating and can really probably turn your situation around really quick. So thank you, Jeremy, and we'll see you on the next episode, Spirit Lifters.
Thanks, Devin. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.